Let's pray. Oh my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in the endeavor and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge, and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily thou art their helper and their Lord. Baha'u'llah.
Shall I? Okay. O my Lord, this is a lamp lighted by the fire of thy love and ablaze with the flame which is ignited in the tree of thy mercy. O my Lord, increase his enkindlement, heat and flame with the fire which is kindled in the Sinai of thy manifestation. Verily thou art the confirmer, the assister, the powerful, the generous, the loving. Abdul Baha.
Thank you very much, dear friends. We have a very, very special evening tonight. I would like to thank Dr. Sedig one more time for accepting to be here. Dr. Sedig has given me a very short bio, but with his permission, I'll add one more line to it. Dr. Kamran Sedig is a professor at Western University in Canada. His research is interdisciplinary at the crossroads of computing, informatics, applied cognitive science, and human-centered design of tools for thought. I would like to add to this, with his permission, that Dr. Sedig is an incredible father, a fantastic friend, and a community member that everyone would be able to rely on. Dr. Sedig, thank you very much for accepting to be with us tonight. Please go ahead. Your subject is Consciousness, a Baha'i Perspective.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and Mrs. Masroor is always very kind. She puts me to shame, so I don't know how to thank her. So as you can see, I changed the title of the presentation slightly. It's an examination of consciousness and its purpose from a Baha'i perspective, of course. So I'm using two computers. One of them I'm using slides, okay? Now, many people ask me why I don't start things or I don't tell stories. And one of the reasons is that some of the topics I deal with are, they don't lend themselves to stories. So, but I thought I start this one with the story of why I'm interested in the subject itself. So when I was young, I left Iran and I went to France and then Canada. And like many young people, I had a lot of questions about life, and I considered myself sort of an atheist. And as I was going through university, I was, of course, busy. I didn't have much time to reflect upon deeper questions of life, but I always had questions. Then so when I finished my bachelor's degree, I was the valedictorian of the Faculty of Engineering and Computer Science, but I became, I wouldn't say depressed, but I wasn't happy because I had a lot of questions about the fundamentals of life, and I found it difficult to talk to many other young people. So I started reading a lot of books on philosophy and psychology, But I was always guided by these few statements from Socrates that an unexamined life is not worth living. And I always wondered about questions in life, and I wanted to understand why I was alive. But I was also a seeker of truth. I would go where arguments would take me. So this is one of the reasons I became interested in the concept of consciousness and spirit and religion in general. And I know that many people nowadays don't really read books. And since that time, I have probably read hundreds of books, and it has become a journey of my life to basically understand these fundamental questions of life. So tonight we are going to deal with one of those questions. So we want to examine the fundamental but very challenging concept of consciousness. And we'll see that it has a lot of depth. And we want to see what its meaning is, what its purpose is. And human beings have been trying to figure this out from the very beginning, actually. And it is related to everything, including the structure of reality itself. And we will see that an understanding of this concept also helps with an understanding of what the purpose of life is and what the nature of human beings is. So, continuing the preamble, I want to read two passages from two physicists. I regard consciousness as fundamental. Everything we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness. That is from Max Planck, physicist, Nobel laureate. The laws of quantum mechanics cannot be formulated without recourse to the concept of consciousness. That's from Eugene Wigner, again, a physicist, Nobel laureate. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is, as we read some passages, I will try to summarize them in my own words, or I try to give you my own interpretation of what we are going through. So here, basically, I wanted to share two ideas, that consciousness is fundamental, and the word fundamental means primary and central to everything we talk about and think about, actually. And everything points to and assumes the existence of consciousness. So with that, now I'm going to share a couple of passages from Baha'i scriptures, and then I'll tell you what our approach will be for this presentation. Science and religion. The foundations of religion are reasonable. If they are opposed to science and reason, how could they be believed and followed? Religion and science are intertwined with each other and cannot be separated. The faith of God is all-embracing in scope, broad in its outlook, scientific in its method. So these are all from Baha'i scriptures. Now, so I wanted to share with you what my premises are and how I am approaching this concept of consciousness. Two fundamental premises here. One, that religion and science must be inseparable. And two, that true religion must be all-embracing in scope and scientific in method. So those are the premises of this presentation. Next is the principle of independent investigation of truth. Again, just two passages here, two quotes. To find yourself, think for yourself. That's from Socrates. And then the next one, investigate and analyze the principles of the faith and to correlate them with the modern aspects of philosophy and science. Therein lies the very essence of the principle of independent investigation of truth.
friends, could you mute yourself? I apologize, Dr. Sedig. I
No,
don't I don't see the friends because I've pinned you and the screen is I
Uh,
don't have screen.
I can,
You,
okay.
okay, you can okay.
I saw, okay. That's okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I apologize.
So the first principle of the Baha'i faith is independent investigation of truth. And to correlate means to establish a mutual relationship or connection between. So the essence of this principle of independent investigation of truth basically involves correlation of concepts and principles found in religion with modern aspects of science and philosophy. Because oftentimes we talk about independent investigation of truth, but we may not actually think about this principle in terms of correlating it with science and philosophy. Okay, so what's our approach? I'm going to correlate Baha'i statements regarding consciousness with those from philosophers, psychologists, physicists, mathematicians, and others. And to correlate, I'm going to use many quotes from different sources, and they're going to be weaved together to help with an understanding and appreciation of the profundity of this concept. So this is going to be a long presentation. Some of you are going to dislike me by the end of this, but I had no choice. I had to make a decision because this is such a challenging concept that any other way you do it, it may leave lingering questions in one's mind about the validity of some of the ideas that the Baha'i faith presents. So I'm going to rely on science and philosophy and mathematics. Now, when I say I'm going to use those, I'm not going to give you any formulas. I'm not going to get into presentation of scientific details, but I use quotes from different sources. Now, if some of the passages are unclear, because I don't know, I don't know people's backgrounds, since these will be recorded, you can always go back and look at the passages for yourselves. And some of the ideas will be repeated a few times to reinforce them. As you will see, all the ideas will be integrated and summarized at the end. And one other thing I wanted to emphasize is that the presentation is from a personal perspective, even though I say a Baha'i perspective or Baha'i view, but this is my understanding of how the ideas are related to science and philosophy. Anything in bold has been added by me, and Andisha Sedig will help with reading of many of the quotes, because I don't want to bore you with my voice. So this way there would be some degree of changing between my voice and my wife's voice. Her voice is better anyway. Okay, let's start.
The conflict between scientific naturalism and various forms of anti-reductionism is a staple of recent philosophy. On one side, there is the hope that everything can be accounted for at the most basic level by the physical sciences, extended to include biology. On the other side, there are doubts about whether the reality of such features of our world as consciousness, intentionality, meaning, purpose, thought, and value can be accommodated in a universe consisting at the most basic level only of physical facts. Facts, however sophisticated, of the kind revealed by the physical sciences. Thomas Nagel, philosopher.
So we want to start with this one main focal element of recent philosophy, which is dealing with this tension or conflict between a materialistic versus non-materialistic, anti-reductionistic perspective of reality. And so let's keep this in mind, because nowadays there are certain assumed positions. So in order to go to the Baha'i view, we need to actually see what recent philosophers are talking about.
It is convenient to regard the world as existing objectively on its own, but it certainly does not. Erwin Schrödinger, physicist, Nobel laureate. The conception of the objective reality of the elementary particles has evaporated not into the cloud of some new reality concept, but into the transparent clarity of a mathematics that represents no longer the behavior of the particles, but our knowledge of this behavior. Werner Heisenberg, physicist, Nobel laureate. Everything we call real is made of things that cannot be regarded as real. If quantum mechanics hasn't profoundly shocked you, you haven't understood it yet. Niels Bohr, physicist, Nobel laureate. Anybody who has been seriously engaged in scientific work of any kind realizes that over the entrance to the gates of the temple of science are written the words, "Ye must have faith." It is a quality which the scientists cannot dispense with. Science cannot solve the ultimate mystery of nature. Max Planck, physicist, Nobel laureate. I am now convinced that theoretical physics is actually philosophy. Max Born, physicist, Nobel laureate.
So avant-garde scientists know that scientific research is based on philosophical and metaphysical assumptions. And this is going to become clear as we go along, that there is no such thing as direct observation and then objective reality of things.
The only acceptable point of view is the one that recognizes both sides of reality, the quantitative and the qualitative, the physical and the psychical, as compatible with each other, and can embrace them simultaneously. It would be most satisfactory of all if physics and psyche, matter and mind, could be seen as complementary aspects of precisely the same reality. A synthesis embracing both rational understanding and the mystical experience of unity is the mythos, spoken or unspoken, of our present day and age. Wolfgang Pauli, physicist, Nobel laureate.
So of course, complementary means combining in such a way as to enhance or emphasize the qualities of each other. Now, you see that this is actually quite similar to what was from the Baha'i scriptures with regard to independent investigation of truth and correlation. So in that sense, then, we need a complementary synthetic view of reality that recognizes that both the physical and non-physical aspects of reality are the same.
Epistemological judgments within a discipline are influenced by ontological assumptions, not only by epistemological beliefs. Mayank Kine, professor of psychology. Science unaided cannot tell us what is possible unless it becomes itself metaphysical. Science tells us what is actual, though that will rest on metaphysical and ontological assumptions about the possible. Metaphysics thus provides the modal background against which we set our empirical discoveries. Quote, "We are all metaphysicians, whether we know it or not, and whether we like it or not." Stephen Mumford, philosopher. Anyone who claims, if it can't be measured, if it can't be quantified, it isn't real, is not without religion. Richard Muller, physicist.
So for as I said, I don't know what people's backgrounds are, so forgive me if I'm sharing the meaning of some of the words, because in my experience over the past whatever number of decades, I've realized that some people don't know some of these technical terms. So ontology here is a branch of metaphysics dealing with the nature of being and existence. Now, when we reason, when we use knowledge, our knowledge or epistemological reasoning and possibilities are built on top of ontological beliefs, premises, and assumptions. This is very important. All scientific thought is based on ontological assumptions.
Science's biggest mystery is the nature of consciousness. About all we know about consciousness is that it has something to do with the head rather than the foot. Nick Herbert, physicist. The origin of life is a total mystery, and so is the existence of human consciousness. Freeman Dyson, physicist and mathematician. I have a much easier time imagining how we would understand the Big Bang, even though we can't do it, than I can imagine understanding consciousness. Edward Witten, physicist and mathematician. Attempts to analyze the phenomenon of consciousness and self-awareness rationally appear to lead to infinite regresses. This seems to indicate that consciousness is essentially infinite. Rudy Rucker, mathematician.
So consciousness is difficult and mysterious to understand, and it is the biggest mystery of science. Now, physics doesn't predict that any of us should ever have a mind. It just predicts that we should all work as biological automata or robots. Why is there consciousness? And that is the question that really began to interest me. Then realized that they didn't know any more about, I actually moved into psychology thinking that would answer the questions. Then realized that they didn't know any more about it. That's Peter Russell, physicist and mathematician. Our view of reality, of the universe, of ourselves, depend on consciousness. Consciousness defines our existence. That is Sir Roger Penrose, physicist and mathematician and Nobel laureate. So 2 points that keep coming up. One is, why is there consciousness? 2, that everything depends on consciousness and that it defines existence.
Metaphors form the very ground of human consciousness. Perceived reality is metaphorical. Metaphors serve in the creation of theories. Ronald Val, professor of consciousness studies. Research in the field of human intelligence and the mind is guided by a somewhat motley collection of models and metaphors. Each metaphor generates a series of questions about intelligence, which the theories and research seek to address. Scientists are sometimes unaware of the exact nature of the metaphor underlying the research, and may even be unclear about the particular and limited set of questions that their metaphor generates. They may thus see their partial theories, which address only the questions generated by a single metaphor, as full theories of a phenomenon. Robert Sternberg, psychologist and former president of the American Psychological Association.
So once again, I'm not sure what people's backgrounds are, but one of the important things to consider when we are going through this study of or examination of consciousness is the fact that the way we examine anything, any phenomenon out there, is usually through metaphoric models. And that oftentimes scientists are not aware of the lens or metaphoric lens through which they're examining something. And that can actually limit the scope of their understanding and the questions that they ask. Now, so let's not go any deeper into this for now. So I just wanted to quickly share some of the ontological metaphors of the mind or consciousness. These are the 16 I have collected, but there are many more. You can look at consciousness or the mind as brain or bioelectrochemical entity. You can look at it as a map and geographic space. You can look at it as an epistemological space, so looking at it from the perspective of how knowledge is constructed. You can look at it through a computational lens and use the computers or information processing as a metaphor. You can think about it as a system that is made of other subsystems and components. You can look at it as plant or garden, as anthropological products in terms of how people, what kinds of artifacts they have created and what those artifacts tell us about human consciousness. You can look at it as social processes, spiritual space, slate, library, toolbox, theater, laboratory, mirror, or an extension of what is out there. So each one of these metaphoric models then gives us possibilities for questions and then what we are going to say about consciousness. And each one of them has its own limitations. Anisha, you can leave your audio on.
Okay, just wasn't sure. Okay. The premise that you can describe in terms of physics the whole function of a human being, including knowledge and consciousness, is untenable. Sir Rudolph E. Pearls. Consciousness cannot be accounted for in physical terms, for consciousness is absolutely fundamental. It cannot be accounted for in terms of anything else. Erwin Schrödinger, physicist, Nobel laureate. Materialism is a putting of the cart before the horse, which may be rectified by just inverting the connection between matter and consciousness. Matter is not that which produces consciousness, but that which limits it and confines its intensity within certain limits. Ferdinand Schiller, philosopher.
So two ideas here. One, matter does not produce consciousness. Matter, in fact, limits consciousness. That's an important concept, and it will come up later on. And that consciousness is itself fundamental, i.e., fundamental meaning that matter cannot account for it. Something that is fundamental itself cannot be defined in terms of something else. So this is, again, come up several times. So we want to keep this in mind.
A very hard problem. The easy problems of consciousness are those that seem directly susceptible to the standard methods of cognitive science, whereby a phenomenon is explained in terms of computational or neural mechanisms. The hard problems are those that seem to resist those methods. The really hard problem of consciousness is the problem of experience. When we see, for example, we experience visual sensations, the felt quality of redness, the experience of dark and light, the quality of depth in a visual field. David Chalmers, philosopher of mind, language, and cognitive science.
Okay, so there is a principle, it's called principle of indiscernibility of identicals. It's from a mathematician and philosopher Gottfried Leibniz. If two objects are absolutely identical, then they must be indistinguishable from one another with respect to all their properties. Now, there are many people who think that consciousness is a byproduct of the brain. Now, what's the problem with that? If consciousness is the same as the brain, then if we scan the brain, its nerve cells and electrochemical components. So if we go with the electrochemical metaphor of consciousness, then it should have the same properties as the inner experience or qualia that David Chalmers mentioned. That is, the felt quality of redness, the experience of dark and light, the quality and of depth in a visual field should be observable in the brain. Since the principle of indiscernibility of identicals does not hold here, the materialistic metaphor suggesting the identity of consciousness and the brain cannot explain the consciousness problem. This is why it is considered the toughest problem of science.
The ontology of materialism rests upon the illusion that the kind of existence, the direct actuality of the world around us, can be extrapolated into the atomic range. This extrapolation, however, is impossible. Atoms are not things. Werner Heisenberg, physicist, Nobel laureate. Materialism is a reasonable castle built on top of rotten foundations. Bernardo Kastrup, philosopher of mind and computer scientist.
So again, two things: atoms are not things, and materialism as an ontological assumption is illusory. Therefore, consciousness cannot emerge from it.
Some consciousness researchers might think that they are being hard-nosed and concrete when they appeal to the authority of physics. When pressed on this issue, though, we physicists are often left looking at our feet, smiling sheepishly, and mumbling something about "it's complicated." We know that matter remains mysterious, just as mind remains mysterious. And we don't know what the connections between those mysteries should be. Classifying consciousness as a material problem is tantamount to saying that consciousness too remains fundamentally unexplained. Adam Frank, Astrophysics.
Okay, so physical matter is mysterious, mind is mysterious, consciousness cannot be explained in terms of another mysterious concept, which is matter itself. Well, so this is very important. So we have two mysteries, but we think that one would explain the other.
Naive realism maintains that the objects of ordinary experience actually and objectively possess the features that our perceptions indicate them to have, that grass really is and does not just appear green, and that sugar really is and does not just seem sweet. And in thus maintaining that things do really possess the discernible properties that they manifest in experiential encounters, such realism is a doctrine that coordinates phenomenology, appearance, with ontology, makeup, and takes experience to ratify the nature of things. A naive realism that identifies observed properties with actual ones is untenable, with its claims, quote, easily shown to be erroneous by the argument from illusion. Nicholas Rescher, philosopher. Some scientists, whether they put it this way or not when they are asked to reflect, still carry on as if there just exists a reality out there, the nature of which is independent of any consciousness of it, naive realism. These are usually biologists. You won't find many physicists who would think that. In reality, we participate in the knowing. There is no view from nowhere. Ian McGilchrist, psychiatrist and neuroscientist.
So another very important concept is that perception of the world is a co-constructive process. We participate in construction of that reality. It is naive to assume that things as they appear to the mind are identical to how they are in the physical world. And this will become clear as we go through further slides.
Immanuel Kant realized in a major breakthrough for philosophy over 2 centuries ago that we never actually know the world itself directly. We make inferences about the world, and based on these inferences, we then have an experience of the world. This is what science does. It collects experiences of the world, and from those experiences, it makes inferences about the nature of physical reality, about what is out there giving rise to our experience. So you can say that the process of science is testing those inferences, checking them out with other people, and coming to a consensus understanding of the nature of the physical world. But it's important to recognize that all of this understanding is always based upon experiences in the mind. A lot of the problems and contradictions that arise in modern physics come about when we forget that this is what's really happening. It's becoming clear that the way things appear in the mind is not always the way things are in the physical world. The simplest example is that of color. When we see the color green, we are experiencing light of a certain frequency or photons of certain energy. The light itself isn't green. There's no such thing as a green photon. It's just a photon of a particular frequency that, when experienced by the eye and brain, gives rise to a certain experience of greenness in the mind. This is true of all experience. What is out there is unlike what we're actually experiencing in the mind. When we don't see this, we make the mistake of projecting our own experience onto our understanding of the world. The more we study the physical world, the less evidence we find for anything physical. It sometimes seems as if there is nothing there, or rather, no thing there. Whatever matter is, it's not made of matter. Peter Russell, physicist and mathematician.
Okay. So just to summarize a few of these, naive realism is thinking that what is in front of us is reality. Actually, many people still believe this. We process photons and transform them into an image that we interpret. Now, if we didn't process photons and instead, for instance, process neutrinos, then we would actually see through the world, and the world would just be shadow. So again, this argument from illusion, or the fact that, for instance, bats, remember we talked about Nagel was one of the philosophers who raises this issue that bats see the world completely differently. So reality is not solid, it's mostly empty space. And if we examine the world carefully, we see that it is no thing. Everything is basically particles, quarks and electrons. These are mathematical point particles, which means they don't have mass and they don't occupy space, and they are timeless and eternal. So with this in mind, let's now move to the next concept.
Nobody has the slightest idea how anything material could be conscious. Nobody even knows what it would be like to have the slightest idea about how anything material could be conscious. So much for the philosophy of consciousness. Jerry Fodor, philosopher and cognitive scientist.
So the question comes up, if consciousness is not material, then what? How does consciousness arise? You are on mute, Anisha. Don't
Thank
put
you.
yourself on mute anymore.
As a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you as a result of my research about atoms this much. There is no matter as such. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. Max Planck, physicist, Nobel laureate. Consciousness does not exist because the physical world does. The physical world exists because consciousness does. Consciousness is independent of the physical world. Jim Tucker, professor of psychiatry and neurobehavioral sciences.
Okay, so now we're beginning to go into deeper aspects of this. Consciousness is a force behind matter, and matter itself exists in a matrix of a conscious mind, not the other way around. So now let's go to the Baha'i view. So that was all preamble to going into the Baha'i view of consciousness. And for those who are unfamiliar with Baha'i scriptures, these translations, so the original language doesn't have male and female pronouns. So wherever you see man, it stands for human beings. In man, there are two natures, spiritual and material. That's Baha'i scriptures, Paris talks. In his spiritual or conscious being, he transcends the world of material existence. Baha'i scriptures, promulgation. Spiritual blessings are endless. Spirit, consciousness, thought, memory, perception, ideation, and other endowments. Baha'i scriptures, promulgation. Now, so we have two aspects, material and spiritual, i.e. consciousness. Consciousness itself is a spiritual blessing and gift. And consciousness, because it transcends material reality, cannot have physical, spatial, temporal properties. We can only talk about non-physical things metaphorically. That's part of the nature of human language.
Motion is life. Nothing is stationary in the material world of outer phenomena or in the inner world of intellect and consciousness. Baha'i scriptures. Our knowledge of anything is embedded in a movement, since consciousness is not a fact or a thing, but an act. It is not just that it is a flowing movement. It is that movement unites me with the world. Motion is intrinsic to the betweenness and the directedness of consciousness itself. Ian McGilchrist, psychiatrist and neuroscientist. Reason, mind, consciousness, or ego all give the impression of substances rather than functions, of something at rest rather than in motion. They are functions which are directed constantly towards other people and things. Norbert Elias, sociologist.
Consciousness is active, functional, directed, and moves. And later on, we'll see that it's actually a process. And this is one of the problems we have with the examination of this concept.
Consciousness of self in man is a gradual process and does not start at a definite point. It grows in him in this world and continues to do so in the future spiritual world. Baha'i scriptures. Man passes through different phases, and when in a lower consciousness, he cannot comprehend the consciousness above. When we were in the state of the unborn child, we had no knowledge of the world of man. If the vegetable kingdom could speak, it would cry out, "Where is the world of man?" We cry out, "Where is the kingdom of the spirit?" Baha'i scriptures.
Okay, so not only consciousness is active and function and directed, it's a process and grows, and it has degrees. It goes from lower to higher.
To explore the fundamental nature of the cosmos, we don't have to travel to outer space, but to inner space. The one thing that we cannot deny, and the one thing that science has yet to explore. The next stage in knowing reality is knowing ourselves. To our mastery of matter, we are adding a growing mastery of mind. Both science and spirituality seem to be two sides of the same coin. Peter Russell, physicist and mathematician. Mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We ought rather hail it as the creator and governor of the realm of matter. Sir James Jeans, physicist.
Okay, so now we come to this slide. So I wanted to get into this because many years ago, in the 80s actually, one of the people I encountered was David Bohm. And he wrote a book at that time. It's called Wholeness and the Implicate Order. And in my view, David Bohm was one of the greatest minds on this planet. So he came up with a theory, and he actually even developed the mathematics for this. So he talks about this implicate-explicate order. Generally speaking, the laws of physics have thus far referred mainly to the explicate order. Indeed, it may be said that the principal function of Cartesian coordinates is just to give a clear and precise description of explicate order. Now we are proposing that in the formulation of the laws of physics, primary relevance is to be given to the implicate order, while the explicate order is to have a secondary kind of significance. A new notion of order is involved here. The implicate order, from the Latin root meaning to enfold or to fold inward. In terms of the implicate order, one may say that everything is enfolded into everything. This contrasts with the explicate order, now dominant in physics, in which things are unfolded in the sense that each thing lies only in its own particular region of space and time and outside the regions belonging to other things. David Bohm, physicist, and he was a protege of Einstein.
Implicate-explicate order and entanglement. Einstein's protege, American physicist David Bohm, felt that quantum theory suggested the existence of a deeper reality than the one presented by our senses. He dubbed the implicate order an undivided holistic realm that is beyond concepts like space-time, matter, or energy. In the implicate order, everything is fully enfolded or entangled with everything else. By contrast, the explicate order world of ordinary observations and common sense emerge or unfold out of the implicate order. Bohm used a hologram as a metaphor to illustrate how information about a whole system can be enfolded into an implicit structure, any part of which reflects the whole. Dean Radin, psychologist and noetic scientist. A person can describe his actions and personality only as an almost random multitude of particulars, even though the most primal datum of consciousness is unity. Rudy Rucker, mathematician.
Okay, so now let's correlate. Turn thy sight unto thyself, that thou mayest find me, i.e. God or Spirit, standing within thee. By scriptures, that's from Hidden Words of Baha'u'llah. Reflect upon all these planes and states that are folded up and hidden away within you. Dost thou think thyself only a puny form when within thee the universe is folded? Baha'i scriptures, 7 valleys. Behold, the kingdom of God is within you. So I thought I should share this also from Christ. So everything, i.e. the universe, is folded, which is the implicate, within each human soul. All individuals are unfolded, explicate, distinct entities of one whole with a capital W. And this is going to become clear as we move on. Some have described him, referring to a human being, as the lesser world, when in reality he should be regarded as the greater world. That's why scriptures' gleanings. Man is the microcosm, and the infinite universe, the macrocosm. The mysteries of the greater world, or macrocosm, are expressed or revealed in the lesser world, the microcosm. The greater world, the macrocosm, is latent and miniaturized in the lesser world, or microcosm of man. So metaphorically speaking then, consciousness is the universe, i.e. the greater world, that is folded within us. And this is, I'm correlating it with what David Bohm has said.
Matter is mostly ghostly empty space. Sir Arthur Eddington, physicist. Quantum physics provides a modern version of ancient spirituality. In a universe made out of energy, everything is entangled. Everything is one. Bruce Lipton, biologist. Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. Albert Einstein, physicist, Nobel laureate. The world is like the vapor in a desert, which the thirsty dreameth to be water, and striveth after it with all his might, until, when he cometh upon it, he findeth it to be mere illusion. Baha'i scriptures. The universe looks less like a big machine than a big thought. Dean Radin, psychologist and noetic scientist.
Okay, so according to modern physics, world is more like a giant thought. It's not a machine. And deep down at the quantum level of reality, there are no solid objects. Universe is more information than anything. It's empty space. Existence only has meaning in terms of relationships. There is no locality, no time, and everything that we think about the universe as solid, constant, it just dissolves. Okay, so now let's correlate again, this inner world, outer world. The world of matter, i.e. the physical world, is an outer expression or facsimile or copy of the inner kingdom of spirit. That's Baha'i scriptures promulgation. That which thou beholdest in this temporal world are the fleeting shadows of the world of the kingdom and the external images of the celestial realm. This is why thou observest that these shadows and forms are continuously being renewed. They are not permanent, but the succession of similar forms and like states is such as to give the appearance of constancy. By scriptures and selections. So, at the surface level of reality, the time-space world that we inhabit, we see solid, constant objects. These are shadows and forms being renewed by deeper level reality. That is the celestial realm or spirit. So we could refer to it as the implicate order. Baha'i writings refer to it as the celestial realm or spirit.
It will be ultimately misleading and indeed wrong to suppose, for example, that each human being is an independent actuality who interacts with other human beings and with nature. Rather, all these are projections of a single totality. In the implicate order, we have to say that mind enfolds matter in general, and therefore the body in particular. Similarly, the body enfolds not only the mind, but also, in some sense, the entire material universe. We have evidently to include matter beyond the body if we are to give an adequate account of what actually happens. And this must eventually include other people, going on to society and to mankind as a whole. David Bohm, physicist, protege of Einstein. Every created thing is a sign of the revelation of God. Each, according to its capacity, is and will ever remain a token of the Almighty. Each and every created thing hath, through the act of the divine will, been made a sign of his glory. So pervasive and general is this revelation that nothing whatsoever in the whole universe can be discovered that doth not reflect his splendor. Baha'i scriptures.
So this is actually I shouldn't say, but this is my favorite slide. The second passage is about universal revelation. And I am baffled by the profundity of the thought of David Bohm, because essentially he is saying the same thing. He is talking about universal revelation in the sense that all things are projections of a single totality. Now, you can put / divine spirit or divine will, or you can even say that this is the image of God reflected in the totality of the universe. So let's again summarize what David Bohm is saying with regard to the implicate and explicit order and consciousness. Mathematics of quantum theory suggests the following. One, they have an implicate enfolded order. Everything internally is related to everything within this order, which means they are permanently entangled. An explicit unfolded order, everything seems separate, and that gives us distinctiveness and diversity of form. And it emerges out of the implicate order. Now, our consciousness is the experience of this implicate enfolded intelligence, intelligent order, that is like an ocean, and it unfolds itself in everything. all these planes and states are folded up and hidden away within you. That's Baha'i scriptures, 7 Baha'is. Let's again correlate with David Bohm's view. The universal divine mind embraces existing realities and is a conscious power. Baha'i scriptures, unanswered questions. God did not create the world suddenly, but God's breath of life becomes the creative word of command, or logos, mind or word of God, which continuously creates the world. We have a continuing and not a single act of creation. Baha'i scriptures, creation of the world. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force, which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind with a capital M. This mind is the matrix of all matter. Max Planck, physicist, Nobel laureate. So, the universal divine mind, a conscious power, is a dynamic force with a capital F that is continuously unfolding itself. So this universal divine mind acts as an implicate order, which is conscious, and it is continuously creating the explicate order.
The universal divine mind, which is beyond nature, is a conscious power. Baha'i scriptures. Entering the heart wherein it is invited, the Holy Spirit brings life and light. Light to discern the true spiritual self. Life that animates and inspires the spiritual faculties to conscious activity. Baha'i scriptures. How shall we attain the reality of knowledge? By the breaths and promptings of the Holy Spirit, which is light and knowledge itself. Through it, the human mind is quickened and fortified into true conclusions and perfect knowledge. Spiritual progress is through the breaths of the Holy Spirit and is the awakening of the conscious soul of man. Baha'i scriptures.
So the universal divine mind, i.e. the Holy Spirit or this conscious power, embraces everything, is an ocean. And through its breaths and promptings, knowledge, human consciousness is constantly renewed.
God has created a conscious spirit within man. Baha'i scriptures. By faith is meant first, conscious knowledge, and second, the practice of good deeds. Baha'i scriptures. Love is the conscious bestowal of God, the bond of affiliation in all phenomena. Baha'i scriptures. Live in conscious at-one-ment with the eternal world and become quickened and awake with the life and love of God. Baha'i scriptures.
So consciousness is a property of human spirit. Love is a conscious bestowal of God that binds phenomena. Faith is conscious knowledge. And in a sense, then, now spiritual life is conscious at-one-ment with the eternal world. So we see the role that consciousness is playing in all aspects of reality itself. Again, this is one of my favorite statements. So we want to see the relationship between spirit and human soul and consciousness. Spirit, mind, soul, and the powers of sight and hearing are but one single reality, which has manifold expressions owing to the diversity of its instruments. It is single in its essence, yet manifold through the diversity of its instruments. That's Baha'i scriptures, summons of the Lord of Hosts. The spirit is as one great ocean, and the waves thereof are the souls of men. Baha'i scriptures. Now, so implicate or enfolded spirit, which is one great ocean, becomes unfolded as multiplicity and diversity, either as individual souls, which are the waves of this ocean, or other consciousness functions. And these are the instrumentalities: mind, perception, ideation, all the gifts that were discussed before.
Soul and consciousness. Thou hast asked me whether man will retain after his physical death the self-same consciousness that characterized his life in this world. How can anyone imagine that man's consciousness will be maintained when the very instruments, i.e., body and brain, necessary to their existence and function will have completely disintegrated? Know thou that the soul of man is exalted above and is independent of all infirmities of body or mind. Baha'i scriptures, gleanings.
So notice how soul here is equated to its function, which is consciousness. So in that sense, consciousness continues after death because it is not a material reality. As a non-material reality, as an implicate thing, it is indivisible.
Physical nearness or remoteness is of no importance. The essential fact is the spiritual affinity and ideal nearness. Baha'i scriptures. Nearness is in reality of the soul, not of the body. Baha'i scriptures, tablets.
So one question that comes up is, how is it possible that physical distance is not important?
Entanglement and non-locality. Any two objects that have ever interacted are forever entangled. The behavior of one instantaneously influences the other. An entanglement exists even if the interaction is through each of the objects having interacted with a third object. In principle, our world has a universal connectedness. Bruce Rosenblum and Fred Kuttner, physicists. The more we know, the more exposed we are to our ignorance, and the more we know to ask. Non-locality is an indelible feature of entanglement, and entanglement is an indelible feature of quantum mechanics. Marcello Gleiser, physicist and astronomer. We live in a highly entangled, interconnected universe where a fundamental information field is shared across all scales to generate organized matter and eventually self-organizing systems, leading to organisms reflecting back on themselves, asking fundamental questions about existence. This process drives evolutionary mechanisms in which the environment influences the individual and the individual influences the environment in a non-local, interconnected wholeness, a universe that is ultimately one. Nassim Haramein, physicist. entanglement and non-locality. Physicists recently demonstrated that entanglement exists not just over space, but over time. They generated and fully characterized an entangled pair of photons that have never coexisted. These findings together are of considerable significance for a question that recurs throughout this book: how the parts relate to the whole. The parts of things, most especially living organisms, are never isolated one from another. The finding of quantum entanglement in space and now in time underlines how fundamental this truth is to the structure of the world. As the researchers themselves point out, the apparent puzzle of how parts fit with an overall whole presumes clear-cut spatial boundaries among underlying components. Yet spatial non-locality cautions against this view. Temporal non-locality further complicates this picture. How does one describe an entity whose constituent parts are not even coexistent? Try a family, a culture, a civilization, and of the living world. Ian McGilchrist, psychiatrist and neuroscientist.
Okay, so let's summarize entanglement and non-locality. Particles communicate with each other. Communication is instantaneous and outside of time and space. Particles remain entangled together forever. And at the level of deep reality, everything is non-local and entangled. Nearness and cause and effect, as we perceive in classical physics, are not real in the quantum world. Our senses do not show us and capture what reality is. Quantum theory, in this sense, is, you see, very close to the Baha'i view that we've seen. So I come back to the two statements that we read. Physical nearness or remoteness is of no importance. The essential fact is the spiritual affinity and ideal nearness. Ideal in the sense of ideation or thought.
All things are involved in all things. Each phenomenon is the expression in degree of all other phenomena. Baha'i scriptures. There must assuredly exist both spiritual and material relationships among the countless universal beings. And although our present methods and sciences cannot detect these relationships among the universal beings, their existence is nonetheless clear and indisputable. All beings, whether universal or particular, are mutually connected in accordance with God's consummate wisdom and mutually influence one another. Were it not so, the all-embracing organization and universal arrangement of existence would become disordered and disrupted. And as all created things are most soundly connected one with another, they are well ordered, arranged, and perfected. This matter deserves close examination and calls for careful attention and deep reflection. Baha'i scriptures. Earthly and heavenly, material and spiritual, accidental and essential, particular and universal, structure and foundation, appearance and reality, and the essence of all things, both inward and outward, all of these are connected with one another and are interrelated. Baha'i Scriptures, Tablet of the Universe.
So you see, the concept of entanglement discussed in New Physics is a universal phenomenon in the Baha'i scriptures. Notice how in the second passage says that although our present methods and sciences cannot detect these relationships among the universal beings, their existence is nonetheless clear and indisputable. So this was probably written in 1905. This is prior to modern physics. So entanglement is a universal phenomenon among all things, irrespective of whether they are material or non-material. This is a universal phenomenon.
Consciousness and entangled souls. The soul, after its separation from the body, keeps its individuality and its consciousness both in relation to other souls and to the human beings in this world. It is able to commune with other souls. This communion, however, is purely spiritual in character. Baha'i scriptures. Those who have ascended have different attributes from those who are still on earth, yet there is no real separation. In prayer, there is a mingling of station, a mingling of condition. Pray for them as they pray for you. Baha'i scriptures.
So souls, Baha'i people's consciousnesses are eternally entangled. Souls are conscious of one another and continue to commune after physical death. Consciousness of the deceased can remain entangled with the living. These are breathtaking concepts, in my view.
Purpose of being conscious. That which is beyond the range of the senses, that realm of phenomena through which the conscious pathway to the kingdom of God leads. Baha'i scriptures. He has conferred upon him, a human being, the invisible forces of conception and ideation, so that he may become celestial, just, intelligent, and attracted to the kingdom of God. Make people understand these ideal principles so that they become aware and mindful. Tell them, you have tried the material world and intriguing its seductive pleasures. Now come and travel with us for a while through the spiritual world. Baha'i scriptures from Abdul Baha and Mahmud's diary. There are certain pillars which have been established as the unshakable supports of the faith of God. The mightiest of these is learning and the use of the mind, the expansion of consciousness, and insight into the realities of the universe and the hidden mysteries of Almighty God. Baha'i scriptures. Spiritual blessings are endless. Spirit, consciousness, thought, memory, perception, ideation, and other endowments. By these, God has guided us, and we enter his kingdom. He has summoned us to the kingdom of heaven. Baha'i scriptures.
Okay, so we are done. I'm going to summarize and integrate everything we've discussed. So, consciousness is fundamental to existence. And people have always wondered about consciousness. Everything is related to consciousness. And scientists examine consciousness through metaphors, and sometimes they cannot understand that they're using these metaphors. And if they go through the materialistic lens, they can't understand consciousness. And according to the principle of indiscernibility of identicals, the brain cannot explain the consciousness problem. Consciousness is mysterious and difficult to understand. It is naive realism to think that what is in front of us is, so our conception of it is the same as reality itself. Reality is not solid. There is actually, it's mostly empty space, and it's no thing. And consciousness does not exist in solid physical reality. Consciousness is a force behind matter and its matrix, not the other way around. We have two aspects, material and spiritual, by consciousness. consciousness transcends material reality and does not have physical, spiritual, temporal properties. We can only talk about it metaphorically. From a micro individual perspective, consciousness is a spiritual blessing and gift, and it is a universe, i.e. the greater world that is folded within us metaphorically. From a macro universal perspective, the whole of reality can be regarded as a conscious product of a universal divine mind or spirit or logos. Enfolded universal conscious spirit, like an ocean, unfolds and breathes consciousness into individual souls. At the deep level of reality, there is no time-space consciousness realm. And then, so at this level, there is an ocean that is surging. This is the celestial realm of spirit that is constantly creating and renewing the external world. And in that sense, because all things are emerging out of this celestial realm, they are all correlated and entangled outside of time and space. At the surface level of reality, where we have time and space, this is a time and space world. We have as the solid world and constant objects, but these are shadows and forms, very similar to Plato's cave. Consciousness is property of spirit. It has degrees and can grow. All individual consciousnesses are non-locally and non-temporally connected through this deeper enfolded ocean of spirit, both in this world and in countless worlds of God to come. However, in order for the entanglement to be strong, they need high correlative capacity and connection, either through conscious meditation or prayer or conscious knowledge of being entangled. Opening the door of our consciousness to what is termed as Holy Spirit brings or attracts conscious spiritual life to the soul and helps it discern its true spiritual self. So in that sense, then it becomes a holographic image of enfolded divine qualities. Which is the entire purpose of existence. So this breath of the Holy Spirit, i.e. spiritual life, animates and inspires one's spiritual faculties to conscious activity and knowledge of God. And finally, the reason for the existence of consciousness is to find God, and it is a pathway to God's kingdom. And we're going to end with a few quotes.
Final thoughts. The essence of existence is a spiritual reality because invisible forces of the spirit are the origin of matter and the foundation thereof. Baha'i Scriptures, Baha'i World Faith. Spirit is energy, and all matter is endowed with energy. And this power is inseparable from matter, as in electricity. In other words, matter is a vehicle for spirit, but the transformation of matter does not involve the extinction of that power, because transformation and transference are in the properties of matter. Baha'i Scriptures. All phenomena are realized through the divine bounty, and all things are but manifestations of its energy and bounty. Baha'i Scriptures. All truth passes through three stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. Arthur Schopenhauer, philosopher. A new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die, and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. Max Planck, physicist, Nobel laureate. The stream of knowledge is heading toward a non-mechanical reality. The universe begins to look more like a great thought than like a great machine. Mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We ought rather hail it as the creator and governor of the realm of matter. Get over it and accept the inarguable conclusion. The universe is immaterial. It is mental and spiritual. Sir James Jeans, physicist. We conclude that consciousness plays an intrinsic role in the universe. Sir Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, physicist and anesthesiologist, respectively.
Thank you. So, we are done.
Dr. Sedig, would it be possible for you to open the screen so we can see each other, please?
Okay. So let me exit the slides and I can exit this.
I just wanted to tell you that I'm speechless, which is very good. It doesn't happen usually, but rarely it happens. And although your talk was, as usual, extremely scientific, but at the same time, it was exceedingly inspiring and mystical. And I don't know how to thank you, Dr. Sedig. I would like to ask if the friends would like to actually send me their questions through chat, I would appreciate it. But let me ask one question. Professor Shaw, are you here? Okay. Okay, that's fine. Perfect. Friends, if there are questions and comments, you're more than welcome. Friends have included some of their thoughts in the chat. People want the recording. Thank you for such deeply and mind-stretching presentations. Priceless presentation. Thank you. And fantastic. I won't go through that, but I'm wondering if our guests have any question. Dr. Hissam, thank you. I see your hand, but I would like to give the priority to the guests of the fireside. From Todd Booth to everyone, an observation only, not a question, similar to the observation of life embodiment in movement. Personally, I live in a world of music, and music is an event, not a thing, and yet it's embodied in all these things, and yet it is itself. I'm sorry, Todd, if I didn't read it well. I have all these things coming up. So would you like to unmute yourself?
I will.
I
Yeah, you just skipped a couple of words here, but as an observation only, a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much. I look forward to looking through the video and stopping it along the way, as you suggested at the beginning. There is just so much to take in. As an observation only, not a question, similar to the observation of life's embodiment in movement. And there were so many quotes here, it's hard for me to catch what everyone's sources were. But personally, I live in a world of music. I'm a teacher and a composer. So music, my observation is that music itself is an event. It's not a thing. And yet it is the most real of things, certainly in my life. It is not the manuscript. It is not the instrument. It is not even the musician. It is embodied in all those things, and yet it is itself. That's it. Just an observation. It's felt very let me pull up the note here, because as I said, I'm running through all these as I go, but it felt very much like a embodiment of many things. To the consciousness would sort of supersede all those things. And there were a couple of other points, as long as I'm on here. The further to the oneness of the religious journey. There's a couple of quotes that came to mind for me that from the Bhagavad Gita, thou art Tatramasi, which is that thou art. Again, the consciousness contained within God and within us. And again, in the Church of Christ Scientist, Mary Baker Eddy's observation that the body is manifest of the mind and not the other way around. I couldn't help but feel lots of places where these were all interconnecting. I'll end my talk there and let you respond if there's any response. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. Dr. Sedig, would you like to comment on that?
Comment on what? Observation?
Yeah. If
no, they're good observations. I don't have any comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brent Davis, would you like to actually make your point loud? That's fine. Brent?
Sure, thanks. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
So Dr. Sedig is used to hard questions from me, so hopefully this one is not so bad. So on the last slide in the summary, you had mentioned that the purpose of consciousness was to know and find God. I apologize if I misquoted slightly. Is that satisfying as an answer? If we go back a step and say it could have been made immediately knowing, or I've seen this I think 3 times now, so I'm starting to nitpick because I enjoy it and I engage with it every time. I think that's my only nitpick.
What is the problem?
Is it satisfying to say that the purpose of consciousness is to know and find God if it could have been made like that from the get-go? Like all consciousness could have been made by the divine creator already.
Well, depends on what you mean by know. To know is a very broad term. It is also, if you by know you mean a static no, then no. But if you mean that it is a force that puts all being on a path of progress, and there is movement towards higher levels of consciousness and organization, then all things are, so the divine will acts as a magnet. It is active. It is a force. It is the milieu and context of evolution. So, but I put that from the perspective of one passage that was there, just with regard to the reason that human beings have been given consciousness is so that they come to the realization of non-materiality of their existence, and that liberates them. And as a result of that, then they grow in the conscious advancement with divine will or the Holy Spirit, whatever terms you want to use for now. And then that helps them grow. Because outside of that, then one doesn't know oneself, and that hinders growth.
I see there are other questions. I probably shouldn't keep us talking, but the part about the magnetism of the divine will, I think I like that a lot. Thank you.
No.
Brent, you can always come back with your new question. We are used to that. We know that. No problem. Don't worry about it. There is Mary Rose. Please unmute yourself if you want to.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sedig. My head feels like it's exploding. So is consciousness, would you say consciousness is associated only with human beings? In the same way that I believe we're told that the soul is associated only with human beings?
So some of the translations with regard to consciousness are not consistent. Now we know that, so consciousness is a property of spirit. Okay. Is a fundamental property of spirit. Now, spirit is universal. All things are enfolded within spirit and unfold constantly out of spirit. Now, we know that even at the mineral level, there is life. So, but as one of the passages stated, consciousness has degrees.
Yeah.
So
okay.
All things have different degrees of consciousness. Okay, but what that consciousness means, I think, is different. So as was stated, a plant does not understand our level of consciousness, nor do we understand higher level consciousness. I hope
Thank
that
you so much. Oh, absolutely. Thank you so very much.
Albert Taborn. Albert, would you want to ask your question? Please unmute yourself. Let us see you. Yes. Hi, Albert. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think, thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. I was catching up on your presentations online. They're wonderful, but my head's spinning a bit. I was wondering about the most vital and challenging issue in this concept of consciousness and the human ocean and how it affects prejudices, how they affect this human stream of consciousness, this ability to be conscious. Are we really conscious if we're suffering greatly from these impediments? I suppose we all are, but if we're suffering greatly from these impediments.
So the question is whether prejudice has a negative effect on consciousness?
Yes, if you could elaborate.
Well, I mean, my understanding is that prejudice acts as a veil that negatively affects the degree of, so to speak, consciousness in terms of how entangled all living things are. So this is one of the reasons I had shared that passage, that the idea of entanglement from a Baha'i perspective is a universal one. So not only at the material level, level of particles, but also at the level of conscious awareness, mind, recognition, communication. So any encounter in the world. So first of all, I had several passages with regard to that. At the enfolded level, there is deep unity, okay? And all things are entangled eternally and forever, because they're all coming out of, are emerging or unfolding out of one ocean of existence that is constantly surging, okay, and manifesting its potentialities. Now, at the external level, we become localized, so to speak, conscious entities. And if we are, if we veil our consciousness, then it limits our possibility of participating in that primal oneness or primal unity. So, and in one of the passages, it says, let's invite people to come and experience this other world so that once they understand. So it's a question of, I suppose, understanding. And again, by understanding, I don't mean informational acquisition of propositional knowledge, but a deep penetration into the some of the mysteries of why human beings exist and what the purpose of that existence is.
Does that help, Albert?
Well, I'm smiling.
I mean,
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to get specific on these things, and I think it was done quite well. Thank you.
if there are more questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Olga is here from Russia. And Olga, is it possible for you to unmute yourself and actually share this question and comment with us? Or do you want?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Unfortunately, I was late for the meeting, so probably when I watch this presentation again on YouTube, I will find the answer to my question. But there was a citation that drew my attention about consciousness, and so that part where it says that the soul is exalted. But how can anyone imagine that man's consciousness and personality will be maintained when the very instruments necessary to their existence and function will have completely disintegrated? So my question is, what ceases to exist after that?
Thank you. Thank you.
If possible.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Sedig.
So again, so I'm going to go from a Baha'i perspective rather than the scientific one for now. We know that by life, we mean two things. One is the life in the explicate or outer world. The other one is life in the inner world, or life of the spirit. Now, the outer world, of course, is a question of basically composition of elemental particles. And so there is some sort of form that then decomposes, and that is regarded as death. Now, because consciousness is not dependent on matter, which was made very clear by so many passages from physicists and philosophers. Therefore, and because consciousness itself, being one of the fundamental properties of the soul, is immaterial, then there is no decomposition, hence there is no death. And so I hope that gives the answer. So there is no decomposition, hence no death. And because consciousness itself is fundamental and is a priori to matter, then there is no death. And hence it continues. There is no, again, continue is a metaphor here. We have to use these words in the physical world. I don't know how else to answer that question. I hope I answered it.
Olga, do you have any more questions? Should I go?
Yes, thank you. I think I will have to think about it later.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Tarone asks us if you have brain damage from the birth, or what happens to the consciousness growth in this world?
So I think now some of the terminology that is used can become confusing. Now, there is a difference between mind and consciousness, but sometimes in the literature, they're used interchangeably. The mind itself is, so to speak, property of the soul, but it functions through the instrumentality of the body. So, and it is very much connected to this world. This is why there's a tablet, it's called Tablet to Auguste Forel. The mind is circumscribed by the senses. So if there is any damage to the senses, then the mind is affected. However, consciousness, which is greater than the mind, is a fundamental property of the soul. And because the soul itself exists outside of time and space and inhabits, when I'm using now scientific language, the implicate order, it cannot be affected by spatial temporal accidents and events. It exists outside of those. And this is why in that tablet, in Gleanings, and I highlighted that, when Baha'u'llah talks about what happens to consciousness after death, he equates the soul with its main function, which is consciousness and the individuality of that consciousness, and says that nothing happens to it because it is independent of bodily infirmities.
Thank you. Todd wrote again, isn't prejudgment the opposite of being open and seeing the harmony of all humanity, a separation rather than a joining together?
That is a question?
Well, he's smiling. Probably it's a question and comment together. Any comments?
And again, I don't know.
Could I pipe in here?
Sure, go ahead.
I was just replying to the observation around prejudice, the
Oh,
questions about prejudice at the time that Albert was putting forward. Just that it seems to be prejudice is a prejudgment and works against any unity in humanity. That's it.
Thank you, Todd. A question. Please talk about the relationship between awareness and consciousness.
Now, I think this requires a larger discussion. So now if we actually look at reality in terms of levels and accept that there is surface to reality and then depth to reality. So again, let's use David Bohm's terminology, implicate and explicate order. So in the explicate order, you have all kinds of distinctive entities. Whereas in the inner realm, we mostly use words to describe functions of the same reality. This is why I had shared one passage from Baha'u'llah, from Loh Rais, where he talks about spirit, soul, mind, hearing, sight. They're all the same thing. But those labels are referring to instruments or manifestation of the same reality through different instrumentalities. So one thing manifests itself depending on the instrument through which it expresses itself. So this is very similar to the concept of light and color. We have, say, one spectrum of light that as it interacts with, say, surface of physical world, then in relationship to the eyes of human beings, it takes on different names, which are different colors. But in reality, it's the same thing. So awareness is one of the colors of this spectrum of consciousness that expresses itself through the instrumentality of the human body. However, even that has degrees. So there are expressions of it. If we talk about its expressions through the instrumentality of our perceptual senses, then, for instance, my eyes can be aware of the existence of an object in front of me, or my ears are aware of a sound from outside, okay? So those are very limited, they are circumscribed by the senses. On the other hand, let's say in the next realm, when the veil of the physical body is removed, when matter doesn't limit the functionality of consciousness, then awareness also increases. We become aware of much more of the things around us, of the reality around us. That is my understanding. Now, I must say that I have spent probably more than 30 years investigating these concepts, and I've read hundreds of books, not just Baha'i scriptures, to see if there are fundamental underlying agreements. And apart from inconsistency in language, there is fundamental agreement. And I think, so in the sciences, you have people who are studying cognitive science. Cognitive science is more about surface of the manifestation of individual consciousness. Then you go into the realm of consciousness, and you can go into quantum physics and things like that. They go deeper and deeper. Okay? And then, of course, religions go much deeper into the very depth of it. We have to be very careful with the kingdom of names, the kingdom of labels that we put on things. I always say, if there is one thing I have learned from Baha'i scriptures, well, I should say from Baha'u'llah, that I think for me has been profoundly transformative, and it has always been a challenge for humanity, is that we should not get caught up in the kingdom of labels and names that we use in the explicit order of reality, because then we end up with infinite labels. I mean, these labels could be about labels that we put on not only constant material things, but also on manifestations of inner reality. So we take those. So let me introduce another term, to reify, R-E-I-F-Y. Reify means to basically give physical properties to things that are not physical, to abstract reality. And human beings have a tendency to, they've been doing that for ages, and they always become slaves of reification. This is also called reification fallacy. So, for instance, when we describe heaven, hell, we describe movement of spirit, these are all non-material things. And because we reify them as physical things, then we confuse ourselves.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sedig. Leslie is asking, is consciousness static or a changing experience?
As we saw even in the passages, all things are in motion, including consciousness. Nothing is static, neither in the world of matter nor consciousness, because consciousness is prior to matter, because consciousness is subject to the law of motion. Therefore, if consciousness is in motion, therefore matter is also in motion, and motion is the expression of life. This is one of the fundamental teachings of the Baha'i faith.
Thank you. There is another question. Dr. Etemad is asking, from an atheist point of view, and if you believe in harmony of science and the religion, if it cannot be seen and cannot be quantified, then it does not exist. How you respond to that? Also, it is so magnificent. How come it does not exist? How you respond to that? Also, if it's so magnificent, how come does not prove itself scientifically? I'm being a devil advocate. Dr. Etemad, if you want to be a devil advocate yourself and would like to unmute yourself, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. From an atheist point of view, if this thing is so magnificent, how come it cannot be proven scientifically? Especially if we believe in the harmony of science and religion. This is what the atheists are asking.
Dr. Etemad, were you here from the beginning, or did you join?
Yes, I was. No, I was from the beginning.
One of the reasons the presentation was so long, and I hope you haven't come to hate me for it, is that I shared several quotes and passages from all kinds of physicists who are Nobel laureates. Oftentimes, atheists who basically claim positions from a scientific perspective. I don't know how to say it. I mean, I didn't share any of those ideas on purpose. I didn't express any personal opinions because I wanted to show that the avant-garde of scientists do not subscribe to the current materialistic perception presented by people who claim they're atheists. So the answers were all given. I mean, I strongly recommend that maybe one should go through the presentation, or anyone who is an atheist should go through the presentation slowly and to see that the evidence is very much there. And a lot of people who, I mean, I've been at the university for a long time, a lot of people who say they are scientists, and as you noted, I mean, one has to actually study linguistics, one has to understand metaphors, one has to understand avant-garde of physics, one has to understand avant-garde of mathematics, etc., to then realize that the atheist position, the materialistic position, and the claims they make about measurement and all of that, those are metaphysical positions that are unexamined. All science rests upon ontological and metaphysical assumptions. And if one doesn't come and say, these are the assumptions or premises based on which I think and do my research, anyone who comes and says science says this or science says that, and the position of science is, they are not scientists. Forgive me for, I shouldn't be saying it here. They are not scientists. They should go and study proper science. And this is a phase in the history of humanity. It will pass. As was shared in one of the passages, I can probably read it again. It was one of the last slides. All truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. Then there was another one. The stream of knowledge is heading towards a non-mechanical reality. The universe begins to look more like a great thought than like a great machine. Mind no longer appears to be an accidental intruder into the realm of matter. We ought rather hail it as the creator and governor of the realm of matter. Get over it. So I mean, I am gentle. I don't go and tell people, get over it and accept it. This is inarguable conclusion. The universe is immaterial. It is mental and spiritual. And this is not from 1 or 2 physicists. This is coming from many Nobel laureate physicists. I can recommend Niels Bohr, who was a genius, Max Planck, Heisenberg. I can go on and on. Schrödinger, David Bohm. Okay, so anyway, I think that is the answer. One cannot go and force people to accept a position. I mean, some of the things that Abdul Baha talked about in the early 20th century. I mean, as Max Planck says, a new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it. Majority of people who are studying sciences do not read any of these books written by physicists who are talking about these things, because they don't get funding doing this type of research. I hope that I gave an answer.
Oh, absolutely. I'm planning to review it 4 or 5 times. Thank you so much.
I think there is one more question. What is the connection between consciousness and personality? Thank you.
That's a tough one. Now, the word, so Baha'i scriptures use the word character and personality. So character is the more permanent one, which is the innate property of the soul. Personality is the, so to speak, epigenetic outcome of character in the world. Okay. Now, some psychologists use these two terms the other way around. Okay. So if by personality we mean the outward expression of consciousness in this world, then personality is basically the outcome of the interaction between the person and the world. So therefore, as a result of all kinds of experiences and all the things that one encounters, etc., there is tremendous diversity of personalities. You can cluster them into groups, but they're basically, because it is in relationship to the world. Does that answer the question? I don't know who asked the question.
Mr. Saeed Samimi. Saeed Khan, you can unmute yourself. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Sedig.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. We have a question. My sister, Aniela, go for it.
I'm going to have to listen to this 5,000 times, sir. I thought I was a smart human being. I take that back. Let me just see if I can frame my question as coherently as possible. So the material parts of our physical being, our eyes, our ears, our perceptions of life, are all to perceive God, an unknowable essence, or to unravel the mysteries of this revelation. If we choose not to do that, the contribution to the oneness of humanity in this realm is stunted, but also the availability of this magnetism that we are promised, the magnetism of love for the revelation, love for unraveling the revelation, is also stilted. So I'm not quite sure what I'm asking, other than is this consciousness all encompassing and available to every human being at every moment, especially transcending into the next realm? Or my choice is to not use my ears as a spiritual capacity, my eyes as a spiritual capacity to see, and discern and unravel the revelation. Am I stunting this oneness even in the next world when I move on? Or is the mercy of God just ever raining down upon us?
All of it is true. No, so one of the challenging things with regard to certain words. So let's go with, for now, let's go with the word spirit. One of the reasons these words can become very confusing is because they are talking about the reality that operates at infinite levels of both vertically and horizontally. So when we use the word spirit, it operates at the level of elemental atoms, vegetables, animals, human, etc., all the way up to divine spirit. But the same word is used for all of them. Now, the same is true of consciousness. You can talk about consciousness at the level of an ant, or you can talk
Here.
about localized consciousness of a human being.
Yes.
You can talk about divine consciousness. Okay, so for instance, one of the teachings of the Baha'i faith is the existence of a personal God. And in describing the personal God, one of the qualities of a personal God is that that God is conscious of the creatures. Okay, so, but that level of consciousness, of course, is very different from my level of consciousness. Again, as was stated in one of the passages. So now, each level of consciousness is somehow connected, like the example that Baha'i scriptures use, like a mirror, for instance. Again, the word connected is not a physical connection. It's connected to some level of reality or physical reality, or it can actually even be level of spiritual reality. Now, at all levels, the purpose of this consciousness is multifold. One is to come and know. Two, to love. Three, to communicate. Four, to draw closer to something, okay, etc., etc. So, and so in a way, if we go to the short obligatory prayer, the purpose of existence is to know God and to worship. Now, to know is related to, there are again levels of knowing. So the purpose of consciousness is that to know. And then to worship is all expressions of knowing. So one of them is inhaling to know, and to worship is exhaling. And the expressions of that exhaling are not only praying, but also all acts of service, all acts of sharing the message of God, all acts of any expression. So one of the, I mean, sometimes we think that it's only physical acts, but in one of the tablets of the Bahá'í, even the act of recognition is considered a deed, and you can actually think about it as worship. So in a sense, this act of even movement or drawing nearer to God is through the process of consciousness, is to grow in a capacity to perceive reality as is more and more. Of course, you made the statement right at the beginning that you said to know the essence of God. Of course, there is no such thing. We can never access the essence of God. all we can know are the signs of God either in the universe, that is why we have universal revelation, either in the world or in ourselves, this is why we have to turn inside, or through the person of the manifestation of God, or through revelation, which is again signs of the time, or through the scriptures. So we have been given different tools, okay, and ways of getting closer to God, because so that no one is left out.
Mm,
There are infinite ways of drawing closer to God.
beautiful. What a beautiful mind you have, sir.
Thank you. You are very kind.
Aniela John, it is not only the mind. Anyways, Dr. Sedig, Sue is asking, might personality be interpreted as an ego construct developed as a defense coping mechanism in lieu of soul development?
If I understand the question correctly or the comment correctly, I believe that is the case. Again, depending on what we mean by ego, because we have two aspects to the self. One aspect is the inward aspect, which identifies with divinity. The other one is the outward aspect that identifies with this world. Now, so the outward world is the world of multiplicity and separation. So if by ego we mean the force that tries to separate more and more, and so that can actually lead to prejudice. If by that we mean that, by ego we mean that, then yes, it has a negative effect on personality, and it can move personality of an individual far from the, so to speak, innate character, divine given character. And I think this is why education is so important. In some unanswered questions, there is this whole discussion that we have three aspects. One is, of course, our physical genes, etc., so the physicality. The second is the innate character, which is basically the image of God, or so the soul becomes the focal center of divine names and attributes. Three is the environment. Now, two of those, meaning the physical part of a human being and the so to speak, the innate character, you can think about them through the lens of epigenetics. Of course, epigenetics is a material thing. However, it can also apply to the other one. So just as in the physical world, you have certain predispositions, but because of interaction with the environment, certain genes are switched on and off, and then you can manifest certain diseases or develop certain conditions. In the same way, one's innate character, if put in a proper environment, one can become heavenly, and if put in the wrong context, it can develop the wrong personality and become selfish and hateful, etc., etc. So this is why then Baha'í scriptures say that environment plays such an important role, both physical environment and spiritual educational environment.
Dr. Sedig, there is one more question by Dr. Hissam. He was the first one who raised his hand. I apologize for not getting it at the time. And he said that that how can we increase our consciousness of our surrounding? And I think this might be the last question. If not, let me know, friends. It's 9:25.
What do you mean by surroundings? You mean physical surroundings, non-physical surroundings? What?
Dr. Hissam, would you like to unmute yourself?
جناب دکتر صدیق و همه مشهور بی‌نهایت ممنون از این sorry, I'm not speaking in Persian. Thank you so much for this profound presentation. If you could please elaborate on both sides.
Elaborate, sorry, I didn't hear. Elaborate on?
On both.
On both.
On both?
Yes. Both surrounding and Dr. Hissam, what else other than surrounding?
No, he asked that is it physical or spiritual?
Oh, physical or spiritual, okay.
Thank you, Dr. Hissam. I apologize. Thank you.
Oh, sure, that's okay.
I think I understand the question now. So, of course, we have physical senses to receive information from the external environment. And the more an individual, so the more those instruments are, so to speak, healthy, let's say, let's use that word. And the more one moves within the external environment, one develops a better understanding of the physical surroundings. Of course, what we do in the external environment has to be interpreted internally, so it depends on the mental structures and models that we have for interpretation or receiving of this external information and interpreting. In the same way as is discussed in some answered questions and other places, we have internal faculties or internal senses that we discuss them metaphorically. So we have inner ears, inner eye, inner heart, inner mind, etc., etc. And they receive information from the inner world or inner world of the kingdom. Now, if we use this other language, we receive information from the enfolded order. Now, again, in order to receive information from the world of the kingdom, so I'm switching now to scriptural language, then our inner faculties have to be healthy. If they are, so again, now I'm using Baha'u'llah's language, if they are veiled, if they have accumulated dust on the surface of the heart or the eye, etc., then even if they are bombarded by information, they cannot process, they cannot capture it, they cannot see, they cannot hear. So this is why working on these inner faculties, polishing them with the burnish of spirit becomes so important. Now, the two, of course, there is exchange of information from the outer world to the inner and from inner to the outer. So this is why we mean by inspiration. This is why people have dreams. And a healthy human being, of course, then has the channels are open for the processing of information in both directions. So just as one has to travel and journey in the outer world, one can also journey in the inner world. Okay, now in order to journey in the inner world, again, the hidden words give us some tools. So we have to close our outer eyes and focus on the inner eyes. We have to close our outer ears to see. We have to meditate. We have to pray. We have to reflect upon the revelation, which means manifestations of revelation in the outer world. We have to reflect on the scriptures. Okay, and this has again been one of the problems of humanity throughout the ages. It is discussed in the Hebrew Bible, in the Gospels. It is discussed in the Quran that eyes they have, but they cannot see, ears they have, but they cannot hear, hearts they have, but they can't understand. So that those are referring to these inner faculties, that even though people have outer eyes, outer ear, etc., but the inner ones are closed. They cannot function. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much. I have 7 more or 8 more questions, but there is no time. And I send you a direct message if you are able to read. To chat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hissam. We will definitely ask Dr. Sedig to join us again. It's about 9:30 and there are a few other questions, and we make sure that you will be the first one to ask your question.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if you could please invite him maybe 10 more times, would be good.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. There is one more. There are questions. Few more questions. Sue is asking again, in light of this discussion, what might certain Baha'i prayers and verses be saying when we pray for protection from quotation, the seen and unseen, quotation closed, and quotation, every other side to which we are exposed, quotation closed.
So the question is?
Sue, would you like to unmute yourself, please?
Oh my, I'm afraid of being too wordy. I was hoping to keep it simple. We say the seen and the unseen. The unseen seems to imply what? In light of this discussion of consciousness, consciousness is unseen. It's non-material. So, but we can be bombarded with consciousness, actually, then, right? And then that every other side to which we are exposed, that long prayer of the Bab, every other side to which we are exposed.
So every other side is the 4 directions and up and down, so that's 6. Okay, that's the physical world. That's the seen. Unseen then is also so you have things that are not accessible to the senses. So that can have many interpretations, and that would be a very, very long discussion. However, in general, the words that are used in prayers, so the names and attributes of God that are used in prayers, particularly names. Names are handles to forces. They are power. Okay, and they enact power. Otherwise, prayer would not have meaning. Now, of course, again, this would be a very, very long discussion, but prayers do affect our consciousness. And prayers, so remember that passage from Abdullah, pray for them as they pray for you. So so in prayer, there is a mingling of stations. So Abdullah uses the term mingling, but in quantum physics, that was entanglement. So so prayer also is an instrument of entanglement, of connection, of communication, of relationship, both with other human beings, whether alive or dead, physically dead, with higher realms.
This was magnificent. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Jane, we will invite Dr. Sedig to come and we continue this discussion. Pina from Malaysia, our spiritual perception, our inward sight must be opened so that we can see the signs and traces of God's Spirit in everything. Everything can reflect to us the light of the Spirit from a talk reported by Miss Ethel Rosenberg.
Absolutely true.
Absolutely true. As usual, Pina, thank you. Daniela John, do you have any more questions or is your hand raised from before?
Oh my God, I have 5 million questions. But you know, I'm brought back to the ontological process that the Bob reveals in that we have access in Gate of the Heart. But I'm really interested in this, you know, the Bob explains that the will of the Holy Spirit, the intention of the Holy Spirit, the destiny of this creation, the decree of this creation is this consciousness, right? But this permission has always stumped me, as if God is allowing this magnificent creation called humanity with the soul, allowing its choice to contribute to this ever-expanding consciousness through the revelation of the manifestations of God. I'm wondering if you can not comment or quickly comment on what does the Bob mean by permission from creation to begin this unveiling of the arc of ascent in the material world?
You should ask Nader Saidi.
God bless you.
This is a long.
Aniela, why don't
Chash, thank you. God bless you. I'll be quiet.
By the way, Dr. Sedig, Aniela speaks Farsi fluently and beautifully without an accent. Vida Khanum, you will be the last if it's okay with everyone. Please go ahead, Vida Ji.
First of all, Kamran John, I know you from Montreal. Vida Samimi, if you remember Vida Venus. I really enjoyed your talk and took so many notes to use it in my, whenever I see friends and so on. I have one question, and that is a question that was keeping my mind busy for a long time. What is scientifically, where does that consciousness come from? And I have taken some notes on videos and so on about quantum biology, and they're searching about it at the level of quantum to see if they can figure it out, what is consciousness. So I'm looking at it not spiritually, but scientifically. Is there anything that you can shed some light upon it?
Were you here from the beginning, or you joined late?
Yes, I was here from the beginning, yes.
Okay, because I shared dozens of passages and quotes with regard to the question you were just asking. So the question is, where does consciousness come from?
Scientifically. I understand you're talking about entanglement of the world, connection of everything together. But I see, like, we see things through our neurons, goes to our brain. And in our brain, what does it happen? It goes to the atoms, correct? Is it possible that the consciousness has something to do with atoms? That's the question I have. It's a funny question.
When I shared at least 10 passages with regard to that. Atoms. So you see, part of the problem is, I have to be careful. This is being recorded. No, part of the problem is a lot of these arguments come from biologists, and their ideas have crept into very biological views of neuroscience. Now, if you go back to where physics was, I don't know, 60, 70 years ago, biologists of today are where physicists of that time were. They're still talking in terms of physical things. Physics has moved far beyond that, particularly quantum physics. Okay, you notice most of the people who have won, who are Nobel laureates, okay, are talking about physics so one of them even said physics is philosophy. Okay, now, and if you noticed, many of them said, Niels Bohr, Max Planck, all of them, there is no such thing as an atom. There is no such thing as an atom. So
that's true.
That's why I had shared those. The presentation was particularly designed for people who ask these questions, okay? So that I don't jump into a Baha'i view. So to say, oh, I don't want an answer from a religious perspective, but a scientific perspective, there is no separation, okay? There is no separation at the fundamental level. What, again, this is my understanding, what Baha'i scriptures talk about is very, very close to the avant-garde of today's science. Very, very close to the avant-garde of today's science. So if there are people who are still in the classical, mechanical, Newtonian version of physics, they are in for a shock, because gradually, okay, at a particle level, biologists are going to reach the same conclusions. The reason all the neuroscience research now is getting a lot of funding is fundamentally because they are dealing with the architecture of the brain. They're not talking about consciousness. Okay, it's all about architecture. So it's very similar to, say, someone who works in computer hardware and architecture. They may know about all the circuitry of the system, but that has nothing to do with, let's say, open AI that you see now. Okay, this is not the architecture of it. They can know everything there is to know about architecture, but nothing to know about this other side of it. So that is one aspect. The second one, so they're basically what they are studying is this. They are studying their inferences about observations that they make, and their observations are through metaphoric models. Okay? And those metaphoric models are usually given to them, and they are not aware that these are metaphoric models. So let me put it another way. Human beings have no access, no direct access to underlying reality. Human beings only observe external shadows of underlying reality, and they make inferences about the underlying reality. Let me give you another example. You can be the best. So if you know people who play video games, someone can be the best video game player. They may know how to win a game, but they may not know anything about the underlying programming that gives them the game. Okay? Scientists are basically video game players. They know, okay, the cause and effect in the outer world of time and space. This is why I shared so much from David Bohm. Let me put it another way. So underlying reality is in motion.
Blank. Witch's brew ingredient in Macbeth.
Yes. So underlying reality.
I have Newt.
Newt?
Oh, sorry. Underlying reality, the implicate level, is in a constant state of flow and flux. Science, so so mechanical Newtonian physics is snapshots of that in the explicate order. So they see a snapshot, okay, and they think that that is reality, but the flow itself is hidden from us. That is the essence part. Now, it's very similar to, how should I say? So if you have a river and you put a stick or something and you have a vortex or some configuration here, and if I freeze it in time and go and study that, that doesn't tell me anything about the underlying flow or the mechanisms of the flow. And this is the problem with today's enterprise. Okay, so people who come and they claim a scientific position, if you probe any deeper, okay, most of them are either not physicists or they don't study philosophy of science. Right? So most people who get degrees in science, if you even ask them what is science, they confuse scientific methodology with science. Or they come and say, science says this, or science says that, or nature says this, or these are all fallacies. These are reification fallacies. But anyway, one has to be careful how much one talks about these issues.
Thank you.
I strongly recommend.
Thank you.
Actually, let me recommend a book to you. It's more than 2,000 pages. Okay. I had quoted from this scientist. His name is Ian McGilchrist. The name of the book is The Matter with Things. Okay, The Matter with Things. So all these questions can be answered there. Or if you want, there are several books. Again, I don't know how interested people are in these types of books. There was I shared a couple of quotes from Rudy Rucker. Rudy Rucker is a descendant of Hegel. There is a book called Infinity and the Mind. I read this in the 80s. I had a copy of this. When my son saw it, he ate it voraciously. He was so fascinated by this. So one of the
Sorry.
infinity and the mind.
Oh, and the mind. Okay.
One of the quotes I had put there is that if you really get into this question of consciousness, you get into infinite regression and you realize it is infinite, so you cannot answer.
That's
okay?
true.
So the other one that I would strongly recommend is Wholeness and the Implicate Order by David Bohm. Okay, then you can also go and read books by Roger Penrose. Okay, these are really avant-garde thinkers.
Thank you so much. Vida,
Thank
if you
Thank
want,
you.
I can always ask more questions and email it to Dr. Sedig. I don't think he will say no to me. We have one more question. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Denidarla, please go ahead. I apologize if I did not pronounce it correctly.
It's no need not at all to apologize. Greetings to all of you, and I send truly love to each and every single one of you, and including Dr. Sadiq and his loving family. So my question is, in a best possible manner, I can translate it in a consciousness level, excluding any other external factors. What happened when the sane, in mortal man's language, the sane consciousness is considered or labeled insane? So we all know what happened to the individual, be it young or old, that have gone, the status of this individual is from sane to insane, but I'm asking, in a conscious level, what is there? Is there a transformation? Is there a change? Is there a sameness? What is it, the state of the consciousness?
I think you have
from
to go,
insane.
you have to go and ask psychiatrists. I'm not a psychiatrist. However,
no, consciousness level.
Physical infirmities. So you are referring to manifestations of the mind and feelings, etc.
Not really feelings.
But consciousness is a property of the soul. Now,
correct.
Even those people, they are still conscious. It's not as if they are not conscious, okay? But infirmities of the body, then, so we are talking about physical circuitry. We are talking about damage
correct.
to the physical, so to speak, architecture, or and that has an effect on how the mind manifests itself. Abdu'l Baha has talked about this in several places, particularly Tablet to Auguste Forel, because Forel was not only an entomologist, but he was a researcher of the brain. Okay?
Right.
Baha there is very clear. The mind is circumscribed by the senses, and if the body is damaged, then the mind cannot manifest itself. The mind will have problem. Okay.
Right.
So
my question was not formulated properly. My question was basically, as a conscious being and as a Baha'i, I require from myself to treat every other beings as a respectable and deserving dignity beings. So what I have witnessed is that sometimes is a label attached to a conscious being, and there is suffering and etc., and that is go out of the context of the conversation tonight. My thinking was,
I think so. At an ontological level, okay,
right,
all human beings, okay, are divine souls. So,
right,
and now, if someone suffers through misfortune or all kinds of, there could be multifactorial in this world, then the growth continues in the next world, because consciousness, as Baha'u'llah said, is independent of infirmities of the body.
right.
Now, that can happen through several levels. One, you can pray for that person. You can still pray even in this world. Or it can be through divine grace, okay? Through divine magnet, that in the next realm, because of divine wisdom. So now this, again, we're opening a can of worms, because each concept leads to another concept.
That's correct.
Wisdom is fundamentally the interconnectedness and entanglement of all things in the universe, and only an omniscient being can see the proper balance of all things. So and that is justice, by the way. This oneness of, in the context of entanglement, is justice. We don't see it like that. So we see individuals, we see infirmity in this world. One person feels superior to another, one is prejudiced towards another, etc., etc. So, but those things, in the great balance of things, that person can be ahead of me because they were at the disadvantage here. Okay? And this is the beauty of bringing all these ideas together. Because when one understands the majesty and interconnectedness of all things, okay, then that elevates human consciousness to this adornment with God and this love and compassion and kindness toward all. So that's how I understand it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. I will ask you another time, I hope. Have a good night, everyone, and thank you so much for all this.
Candidela, where are you joining us from? May I ask?
Oh, not very far, here from London.
Okay, that's wonderful. So you can, you have my phone, my email address is in the chat. Please email me. You can send your questions, and we will have Dr. Sedig another time, because it's 10 o'clock. I apologize, but
no, not at all. Yeah, it's okay. I will do that. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you for joining us. We still have prayers.
Okay.
Thank you. When Dr. Sedig, when Aniela praised your mind, I wanted to add that to it in record, that it is not only your mind, which is beautiful, but I think you as a human being and as a Baha'i and as a scientist, as an intellectual, have a beautiful heart. And I think your kindness, both to your friends, to your family, everyone, really somehow adds to all of this and make it a beautiful whole. Thank you for accepting to be here with us tonight. And I would like you, maybe I can ask first Olga to say a prayer in Russian, then Pina Azizam in Pina speaks Farsi fluently too, but if you can chant in Malay. Gary, would you like to say a prayer after Pina, please? And friends, please feel free. Ms. Shu, thank you for being here. I mean, we didn't get a chance to chat with everyone, but we will arrange for another fireside with Dr. Sedig. Hoda Jul Qadirian, thank you for reminding me about all the things I forgot. So please, may I ask Olga to start?
I would like to say one of my favorite prayers by Abdul Baha for protection. О Боже мой Боже, укрой верных слуг Твоих от зол себялюбия и страсти, бдительным оком нежной заботы Твоей защити их от всякого злопамятства, ненависти и зависти. Дай им приют в неприступной твердыне Твоего попечения, и пусть, неуязвимые для стрел сомнения, станут они проявлениями славных Твоих знамений. Озари их лица сияющими лучами, исходящими от рассвета Твоего божественного единства. Возрадуй их сердца стихами, явленными из Твоего святого царствия. Укрепи их чресла Твоей всесокрушающей силой, что не спосылается из Твоего чертога славы. Ты всещедрый, защитник, всемогущий, благодатный. O God, my God, shield thy trusted servants from the evils of self and passion. Protect them with the watchful eye of thy loving kindness from all rancor, hate, and envy. Shelter them in the impregnable stronghold of thy care, and save from the darts of doubtfulness. Make them the manifestation of thy glorious signs. Illumine their faces with the effulgent rays shed from the dayspring of thy divine unity. Gladden their hearts with the verses revealed from thy holy kingdom. Strengthen their loins by thine all-swaying power that comes from thy realm of glory. Thou art the all-bountiful, the protector, the almighty, the gracious.
Oh my God, you the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy love. Ya Tuhan, bersatukanlah hati hamba-Mu. Perlihatkanlah kepada mereka itu maksud yang agung. Ya Tuhan, bersatukanlah hati hamba-Mu.
Allahu Akbar, 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 Allahu Akbar. O Lord my God, open thou the door, prepare the means, make safe the path, and guide the way. For verily thou art the help in peril, the self-subsisting Ya Baha'ul Abha, Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah. O Lord my God, open thou the doors, prepare the means, make safe the path, and guide the way. For verily thou art the help in peril, the self-subsisting Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah, Ya Baha'u'llah.
Miss Shu?
Yes.
Me?
Yes.
You want me to say a prayer in Chinese?
Absolutely.
Okay. 主啊，请扶持您大同圣树快速生长。主啊，用你恩慈的流水浇灌它，在你神圣确信此事之前，让它结出你满意的果实。为了您的荣耀与尊贵，为了您对你赞美和感恩，为了颂扬您的圣名，为了歌颂您本质的同一性，为了崇拜你。因为凡此种种都由你掌控，无人可以企及。他们的福分何其大哉！你选择他们的血液来浇灌您的确认之树，以此赞美你神圣不变的圣言。发火。
Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Dr. Sedig and family. And thank God that we have been able to get together from so many different parts of the world to love each other and to connect with each other and to learn more and more and more. This was a very, very deep fireside. I totally enjoyed it. I thank you so much. Dr. Sedig, how can I thank you?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity to be with you all.
God bless you, sir. Your patience.
Maybe one day we can do spirit.
No. So, Foruz John, another, home run, just magnificent home run for us. What a gift this Zoom is.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I have one question. Is there any way we can get the writings, the file?
So it will be posted. The video will be posted with all the codes.
But are you going to send me the PowerPoint so it can be added to the Dr.
Let me
Or we can just screenshot as we go back and
can
listen 3 seconds at a time.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Aloha.
Good night. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Love you, Gary. Love you, Foruz.
Love you. Aloha.
Love you. I'll wait until everyone leaves because I want to copy the chat for Dr. Sedig.
And okay, I'm gonna send you. We have a prayer group tomorrow night. I'll get Daniela to send it to you. We have a prayer group that starts at 10 o'clock tomorrow night. That's open for everyone around the world. We're going to keep it this Friday night prayers for anyone that wants to come in and participate. So we'll get it to you and you can put in your link, please.
Okay, Gary John, can you, well, for tomorrow, I'll make sure to be there. But if you create an invitation, that would be great because I can either post it on my Facebook or send it to the friends.
We have an invitation. What I'll do, I'll have someone forward it to you. I think Jane or someone has your email.
Yes, yes.
I'll send it to Jane to send to you or Anyala.
Okay then, perfect.
All right. Thank you. Aloha.
Appreciate it.
Aloha.
Aloha. Thanks everyone. Sohail Khan, welcome. You're just a wee bit late, but what can we say? It's 10:15 our time. Take care, everyone. Good night. Bye, Pina Jan. I love you, love you, love you.